How are you finding things at the moment? Are you busy? Has the year started well?
Yeah, look, thankfully we've started well. But I suppose when the pandemic first hit, we did have a lull in job flow.
Yeah.
It did slowly return to normality, and now we're in a good space. We're actually busier than ever, which is great. But at the beginning of the virus outbreak, people were plunged straight into uncertainty.
Mm.
Overnight, everything changed. Staff were dispersed across the country, suddenly working from home. It put huge pressure on businesses' IT infrastructure, their security, their GDPR, and there's constant stop-start between lockdowns. And we saw two things happen. One, there was a fear of recession. Businesses were asking themselves, do we need as many people as we have on board? Do we have enough money in the business to keep operating? The second thing we saw was clients feeling reluctant to hire when they couldn't meet potential staff in the traditional face-to-face interview setting that we all know. They were facing the prospect of onboarding and training staff remotely, which in most cases had never been done before.
Yeah.
It was completely new territory, which was daunting. So it did trigger uncertainty. Organizations were naturally cautious about hiring, but with the news of the vaccine rollout, the mood has definitely improved. We're feeling a lot more confidence in the market, both on the client and the candidate side. But look, the pandemic has affected hiring in general, but
Yeah.
IT professionals are faring far better than most. The demand for IT talent has really increased. We're seeing really exciting opportunities steadily growing. So it's really positive. It's really encouraging to see. But when we return to work, we don't expect things to be the same as when we left them. Many clients felt pre-lockdown they needed their teams on site with them all the time, and this pandemic has shown that isn't necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Businesses have actually worked just as efficiently with their teams working remotely. So the opportunities are exciting. Companies that were reluctant to trial flexible and remote working are finding that not only it works, but it's actually a great tool. It's a really good tool to attract and to retain talent. So looking forward, I feel like recruitment processes might also change because candidates are getting used to digital interviewing. They're getting used to being onboarded remotely, and there's an emphasis on home working that might lead to an increase in diverse talent coming into organisations in the
Yeah.
future, which is great. We're also finding remote working practices are allowing businesses to more easily consider talent
Yeah.
from different geographical locations. So rather than the traditional catchment areas based roughly around an office's location, they're definitely have more scope now with talent. It's opening the door to looking further afield, which is great. And we've also realised that digital transformations that would have taken years in the making happen literally over the course of a couple of weeks or less in some cases. So the general feeling from business leaders is that businesses are and will continue to be dependent on technology in the future as a result of the shift in working from home. So it's driving the demand for this talent. So I suppose to summarise, IT, we're doing really well, and we feel we'll likely continue to do so after we recover and we exit from the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that bodes really well for your
Yeah.
space, because I know from talking to a lot of the client leaders that we're talking to for our Brightwater Tech Month,
Yeah.
they've all said the same. A lot of the hiring they're going to do is within the IT security and IT infrastructure space, as more people have to work from home. They have to shore things up. They have to harden networks and harden up the
Absolutely.
areas that might be vulnerable. So it sounds, yeah, I'd agree. I think everyone, bar one or two industries, has felt that positive start of the year, even with the even with the numbers that we're seeing in the news
Yeah.
every night. The
Absolutely. Yeah.
jobs market seems to be positive.